Morning, Kate.
Good morning. Sorry, I should even ask how I pronounce your name. Is it Morven?
Yes, that will be fine. Yes, or Morven if you want to do the Scottish version. Whatever. Most people call me Morv now, so that will do. Kate, I put out a little post on social media about wanting to speak mother with mother on the Mother Earth during this really challenging time, which is so challenging it can almost not be described. And you very kindly agreed to sit with me so we could root through some of the things that are going on the Mother Earth or planet Earth or whatever it is that we're in. And I'd said to you just before we popped on here that the one thing that's really troubling me is that I feel that in terms of humanity, the mother has never been able to actually be a mother and nurture and cherish and seed a really fertile future for her offspring, because as far as I'm concerned, I call it, the slavery realm set up or the shopping mall, because as soon as we've given birth, everything comes in to drain the living life force out of our children. And I'd also said, my own mother was born in the Second World War and my grandmother was born in the First World War. And there's been a kind of ambiance, even though it smelt false, that we live in peacetime until 2020, that we were living in peacetime where everything was getting so much better. And I do have a few friends that are mothers that have tried to do things differently already for years, like they didn't vaccinate their children, they did homeschooling, they've been very, trying to encourage creativity and nature, which was the same journey as me, except mine did go to school because their father, didn't want them out. So it's so complex about why have we never been able to be human mothers on Mother Earth, and why are we in this state where, to me, we have giant overlords that have got a intentionally manufactured system, so we just have to be fed off in a system. And now it's an all-time desperate situation, isn't it? And I think, you're really good at speaking about this part of it, Kate, and I really wanted to hear from you what you would like to say about this.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been aware for a very long time. I haven't been aware about lots of things that are going on. It's only been the last few years I started to dig under and realize so much is happening. But I've always understood that you have to fight really hard for your children, and that the whole trust the expert dynamic narrative has been very firmly in place through, I'm 50, so through my whole being a mother, the trust the experts, if that's a psychology, psychiatry, whatever realm that is, the doctor, the nurse, etc., over your own sense of what's right or what's happening for your own children. And I've seen that escalate enormously over the last 10 or 15 years with the mental health model being completely firmly implanted in schools, in doctors' surgeries, everywhere, looking at children in a particular lens, rather than actually helping. And also in psychology and psychiatry, it's just become incredibly normalized to look at children as though they just have a bunch of symptoms where the expert can then say, diagnose them, and then tell the parent what needs to happen next, rather than a whole system. Or so I knew all of that, and I was watching all of that increase and develop, and I was really, really concerned. And I was working in welfare, and I'd go in and talk to parents, and they, and their children just had normal behaviors, but they were just so stressed out and worried that it was problematic. And then increasingly also people's pressures on families have just increased over and over. And you've got children now in before school care, school, after school care, childcare. They're exhausted. They're absolutely exhausted. And then on video games, half the night. So you're getting a lot of behaviors coming through from that, and parents that are exhausted as well. So you've got everything imploding in a way. And then the experts will say, well, your child's got ADHD, or your child's got oppositional defiance disorder. So I was actually in preschools 3 or 4 years ago, seeing children as young as 2 and 3 diagnosed and medicated. And
that's frightening, Kate. Can you just say that the last one you said, there's something disordered? What was it again?
Oppositional defiance disorder. So you've got to,
Oppositional defiance disorder.
yeah, it's just, I haven't looked through the symptoms because all the DSMs are, the manuals are a bunch of symptoms. And so you have like 10 check, you know, tick, 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 you've got these 10 symptoms, you've got this disorder. It's that simplistic. And so, yeah, you're seeing children as young as 2 and 3 medicated for those sorts of diagnoses really, really concerned me. And I was going, how can I really wanted to stand up against that. I mean, I personally tried to talk to parents in a different way than that. And I wasn't somebody that diagnosed, but I also was like, how do I get the credentials so I can stand up in this field and really challenge it? Like I was thinking, do I need to go and do my, PhD on something, or, what further could I study? I was actually thinking of going and studying social work so I could get in there and really do a master's, but it just wasn't going to work at that time. So I've increasingly seen that and been very aware that the trust the experts trumps the parent's sense of what's happening, or anyone being able to sit with that family and say, what's going on? What are the pressures? What's happening for you? Etc. So yeah.
Yeah, my God, it's huge, Kate, and thanks for just laying it all out. And that's I stopped on that strange word, oppositional defiance disorder, because I heard it from my sister, who's younger than me, doesn't have children, works in the expert field, and doesn't, to use today's parlance, is not awake to what is going on the planet in terms of it being nefarious, because that's how I see it. It's malevolent, the way it's gone on year after year after year, like you say, about trust the expert will diagnose everything. It's like every child or even adult is in a petri dish, where it's almost like a human is now under an alien microscope. Let's see how they do this. We need to readjust them. And I have been really horrified when I heard my sister use that expression, but she had used it about me. She said, Morv, if you were a child today, you would be called oppositional defiance disorder. That's how you would be diagnosed, because also, my sort of extended family are not in the position I'm in terms of being able to see, the malevolence as I see it. They fully trust still that the world is a safe place, that those authorities in power all around the place are working for humanity's benevolence. And that's the problem I have with most of the things that are going on today. Nobody's, it's like there's a lot of, it's mind control as I see it, Kate. And it's taken me, we've all been through this the last 3 years of rooting through, right? What is it? What is it? What is it? How is this getting a grip? How can we be told there's a killer plague on the planet and loads of people accept that and accept to wear masks, or, what a cruel and dehumanizing thing to do to the entirety of the human population, lock down a planet, except for key workers. That was the frightening thing to me, the key workers. Like you said, this is again the expert. So the teacher, the doctors, whatever, they're allowed to keep on key working. But anyone that's in something else, you've got to be locked down. And everyone's been abused since 2020 in a way that is, how can we even talk about it?
What they did to people, because I was working in the welfare industry during that time, and also in community development, and I was going, because working in a sort of more lower socioeconomic area, and just saying, there were lots of housing commission areas where people are living in these, really the government here has let Department of Housing stuff go to rack and ruin. It's disgusting. It's like the cholera come back in there, what they've done to the people that live there. And I was just really aware of all these people locked down in these places, and people who had really difficult situations and lives, and they're being locked down. And it really made me so angry that all these sort of more white collar worker professional people were like so fine with it, so fine when they had backyards and they had money to pay, online activities or whatever else, and didn't have a cramped 2-bedroom housing, Department of Housing place, trying to keep sane for 6 months, or I don't know how long the lockdowns went. They went for about 1.5 years, I think, rolling.
Yeah.
You know, and I was trying to raise that and talk about it. I was in online things with other, you know, youth workers, and they're talking about, you know, really vulnerable kids that could no longer drop into the youth centre. I mean, and you meant to just ring them. I mean, it's just, it was just ridiculous. It was worse than ridiculous. It was nefarious. And I just thought it was so, even down to the thing that there were parents who had lost children, and they, you know, had drug and alcohol issues, and they're waiting to get to court, you know, to get their children back, or their programs that they need to do to get their children back. Those programs went online. The court dates, you know, got pushed out for 6, 8, 10 months, a year. They would have potentially lost children. So you're looking at complete generational. I mean, once you've lost a child and you've lost a child into the system, I mean, seriously, that child,
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, it's incredibly painful. And I was just watching all of this thinking, this is so wrong. How are they risk assessing? I wasn't clear about the bigger picture. I just knew what I was seeing was wrong. That you should the only reason you should be doing it is people actually genuinely dropping dead on the street. You know, there was something so horrific that there was just no other option. That's the only reason you could create poverty. They've made people lose work, small businesses, which then causes, you know, worse outcomes. They know all of this. And domestic violence, and, you know, putting all this pressure on families that are already pressured, and they know the pressures. So I was horrified, and a bunch of welfare workers, and we wrote testimonials. We wrote exactly what we saw. We collected about 50 or more testimonials from welfare workers, and then we wrote letters outlining, you know, to the minister who's meant to be responsible for women, talking about what was happening for women in domestic violence situations, and, you know, all the different portfolios, and sent it all off to them, and, you know, and then wrote a cover letter saying, how did you risk assess that what you've done, that COVID was more serious than what you've actually done to people, and sent that pretty much to every politician in Australia, and got very little back, of course, and everything was tried to come back. So I don't know why I started talking about that. I was just utterly horrified by what they'd done to people, and knew that they were creating a lot of misery for a lot of people. And I think after that, I started to see the World Health Organization put out stuff about the pandemic has caused mental health issues. And I was like, ooh, like I was really like, you know, I was like, what are they doing? You know, what narrative are they crafting? And soon after that, I came across Tashi in Australia, who was unpacking the social impact bonds, where wealthy investors can make profit off vulnerable people and vulnerable situations. And I was devastated, actually, when I heard about that.
Yeah, that is devastating. I mean, this is bringing us into this whole, I mean, you know, despite the fact that I was aware from childhood something wasn't quite right on planet Earth, there was still some hopium left in me that we were going to sort of turn it all around. Whether we still can, I don't know, because I feel like many of us, it's like it's even difficult to keep up with the lies in order to say bullshit, or this is dehumanizing. You know, and because you've been in welfare, Kate, and you're also a mum and a grandma, you're getting such a good view of it. I also, you know, I'm a mum, I'm not a grandma, even though I'm older than you, Kate. But I, you know, that's just the way it's been. I was an older mum. But what I really want to get across to people is this is not happening to someone else's family. This is not happening to someone else's culture. This is not happening to someone else's whatever. They are doing it to every single human on this planet, no matter where your culture is, your so-called skin color, your so-called gender, you know, fluidity, whatever it is. You know, so it's like, I just, you know, when you're saying like they were doing this, all these people are super vulnerable. But as you mentioned, they've also destroyed businesses, and it's intentional. You know, and using myself as an example, you know, was a freelance violinist. So lots of my stuff was in the global film industry, you know, touring big concerts, the Royal Phil, the this, the that. we are not really, that's been for decades crushed. So how is a mother supposed to actually provide for her children on even that ridiculous basic level with things like resources that only money can buy resources? There is nothing offered anymore. There is no so-called free stuff.
Mm.
And, you know, so I was speaking out as well in my profession, like you were, you know, but in a different way, which is, what are you telling me you're quarantining some sheet music? Sorry. You know, it's like everyone is going along with it. And when I was doing a lot of session work at Abbey Road, London, the clients are obviously Disney, Netflix, blah, blah, blah. So they still haven't really stopped the social distancing and maybe needing to test people. And I'm not in there anymore because I couldn't chum along with a lie, and it's just been so traumatic. So I don't have any work anymore. So what am I supposed to do with my children? You know, and I'm not even in that horrendous level that you're speaking about, in the sort of welfare area where everybody has been fucked for decades anyway.
Mm.
And this is the bit that's really pissing me off, because as far as I'm concerned, I've identified that as soon, the whole vibe on this planet is the mother is the lowest of the low. A mother and child are the lowest of the low, and that delusion must be kept alive, because as soon as, like you said, you know, you have a child or you're a mother, the experts come in to claw, take away, undermine whatever it is you want to do, whether it's sleeping with your child, breastfeeding, this or that. Suddenly you need to be fucking told what to do by the expert. Even back in the day, as soon as you go to school as a little child, the mother again is reduced. Now the teacher is above the mum.
Mm.
And, you know, and even, you know, my mother and grandmother would have gone along with that. That's what I mean by mind control, because it's like, you know, the teacher says, so you must do this. And now the mother gives over the power to the teacher or whatever. So I don't know how we turn this around, but I think the mother is a key thing, that mothers raising their voices and taking action, whatever that action is, to say this whole setup on planet Earth is utterly unacceptable, because this is just not human. It's not humane. It doesn't work. Nothing is working. And as I said to you just briefly before we came on, like, in the 3 years of these atrocities and this heinous lie and dehumanization, who is talking about the children? Who is talking about children? And everybody was a child once.
Mm.
What is going on, you know?
Yeah, I know, I agree. And you have to be really strong, because so even I was a single mum for many years, and I had to really fight for my children, you know, at different times, and I was treated badly by the school. It's extraordinary, actually.
Yeah.
I think I've had enough times in my life where suddenly you're seen by the experts as problematic. And I've seen that veneer and the mask fall off, and how you're talked to and treated. The minute they see you, you're challenging them in their expert role. So maybe I was, you know, had enough experiences in that time to be able to, you know, say no to this. You know, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, no, and I did get fired. But I also didn't have dependent children. So if I'd had been a single mum with dependent children, I wouldn't have had that option, I don't believe. I don't know how I would have been able to do it. So I have that sense of things. And I think that's really important to keep that in mind as well, you know, that there's just some people who actually didn't have a choice, you know, and I can
Exactly.
really see that. Yeah. But I think I mean, even if you look back to the 40s, it was, you know, really, you should feed the child. At this point, you should, you know, you should bottle feed, you should, you know, put them in a bed and not pick them up if they cry. So it's been, and I'm sure it's gone back. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever been in a position where women have had real, you know, authority around their own mothering and their own instincts. I'm not sure when that would have changed.
Yeah.
No.
Nor me, Kate. And that's what I want to get to the bottom of. Or even if it's like, even if we can't go back in history from here on in, you know, I mean, this sounds so negative, but I feel like we cannot keep pretending there isn't a problem. We cannot keep pretending there's a hopium root somewhere. Because I think I've said this quite a lot on social media the last year or so. I was trying to follow hopium routes, and now I feel like, oh my God, I've been behaviorally engineered as well. because once I'd had my kids, like I've got a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, I could smell and sense, like, I don't see the route forwards for them on this planet. I don't see it. Something feels really wrong now in a way that I hadn't clocked before. And so I was looking into, the forest schools, the nature, this and that, because they didn't seem to want to do what I'd been doing, the violin, the music, the self-expression, the poetry, the whatever. So, okay, let's try forest schools, this and that. Let's try nature, this and that. But now seeing that that is also part of, the Agenda 2030, whatever you want to call it, the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it, the New World Order, which is, or communitarianism is another word, isn't it? Which is, we're now going to position the humans in human ghettos. That's going to be nature community now, and they will still be enslaved. And now they'll be worshipping the tree, the something, but they won't participate and they won't have power.
Yeah, it's
what is that about?
Yeah, and it's the thing that I like. You've got Rockefeller and you've got the New York Stock Exchange with a partnership to put nature on the stock market. So they now plan to come in and absolutely commodify and put nature that was common land onto the stock market. The narratives they spin are just so disingenuous. That we're actually going to be living in some form of harmony with nature. Bullshit.
Yeah.
They want to put technology in every aspect and do synthetic biology to pretty much everything. They want to alter the genetic structure of everything so we're climate. We're good for the climate. I mean, everything that they're saying is just a crock of shit. I'm reading a book called The Earth Brokers, and it was set back in 1992, and it was about the UN, the Rio conference, when they all got together and discussed the Earth and Agenda 2030 and everything. And they were saying they were already in 1992 talking about technology is going to be the way. So business is normal and technology is going to solve everything. And biotech was what they were discussing. So this book is 1992 and it's in there. And that the environmental movement has just got completely co-opted because I'm just always saying, well, where are the environmentalists? Like in my area, in New South Wales, they've killed all the bloody bees and they've put fipronil all through the bush. So they can talk to as much as they want the state government about climate change. They're poisoning the earth still.
That's the point, yes.
They're killing everything. They're killing bees. That means that small farmers are now going out backwards because they can't pollinate their crops anymore. And again, it's like the same narrative. We have to do this. We have to, crack down hard to stop this varroa mite spreading all through Australia. It's going to cause so many problems and so many issues. So you get all these people supporting these incredibly inhumane measures. They just pour petrol into people's hives and just, put the lids on and then stuck tape around it. And the bees just were killed by petrol. It was horrendous. And, so where are the environmentalists? No one talked about it,
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing when you say co-opted, Kate, this is what's been really upsetting for me the last few years, because a long time ago, when I was saying, like, I was trying the forest schools, this, my kids and that, and I was thinking, they're going to be the ones that really look after the Mother Earth. They're not, and whatever. And let's say, so I'd read, for example, many, many years ago, Charles Eisenstein's books, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Knows Possible and Sacred Economics. And of course, naively, I thought, oh, he's one of us. And now I'm beginning to go, oh, because these people seem to be sort of taking over. And then we've got Tree Sisters and we've got Tree Nation. And they seem to me, I might be really wrong, but they seem to me to be working for the agenda, because when I've dug around deeper, they are connected to the United Nations Sustainable Goals, and they either don't know what they're doing or they have been co-opted, and it's either a carrot and stick, like, do this for us, you'll be fine, and they speak out on their TED Talks, and like you said, where are the people that supposedly said, we're here to save Mother Gaia, we're here to save Mother Gaia? I don't think you are, actually, and something's gone really wrong here. And when I looked into Sorry, I just wanted to say one last thing, Kate, because it feels really important, because I'm trying to own how much we've all been duped by the deceivers. When I was thinking, like, I can't see the way ahead for my children. They're not going to be going on tour or doing great orchestras or whatever, or writing books. and they're probably going to be having to do environmental things, and they probably want to. I was sniffing around loads of intentional communities and trying them out. But again, over the last 3 years, even though I tried them out and they sort of felt okay, when I looked deeper into them as well, so it was like Findhorn in Scotland, and the people that had been responsible for setting those up, so it's so long in the making. I then found out this one, that one, this one, that one were all somehow behavioral engineers or had studied, when we started about the expert and the psychologist, how are we going to psychologicize people into changing the way they live as a human on this planet into something even worse, but repackaged as something highly benevolent for Mother Gaia, highly benevolent for the human being, highly benevolent for everyone. And that has been a really bitter pill to swallow, to see that I've been around some of these people, thought that we were doing great things, circle sharing, women in circles, and bringing out, everything you're upset about on the planet, growing veg. Oh my God, I've been used, and for this thing that looks really nefarious. And I really resent that, when you're saying, where are the environmentalists?
Where are they? It's really interesting. I didn't know that. What's his name? Eisenhower? Is that what was his name?
Charles Eisenstein.
I have his book actually here, but I haven't even got around to reading it. But I saw a little clip of him talking the other day with Zach Bush and these whole intentional community people. And I was like, these guys are, to me, it just really concerned me, the sort of the way speaking, the lullabies, sort of, I don't know, just no anchoring in reality in some way. So it's not comfortable to me. But we've got Zach Bush. I don't know if you know Zach Bush. He's, and I never
trust.
No, I never really looked into him so much, but I've got friends who think he's wonderful and have always gone, Zach Bush, Zach Bush. And he's coming over to Australia. So I really like regenerative farming. I like to eat. I try and buy all local stuff, good farmers who really look after the land. I've got no issue with regenerative farming. And he's doing a regenerative farming in the sort of, it used to be the hippie area. It's become less so now. It's because it's got a lot of wealth in it, but up, northern New South Wales. He's in there and he's talking also with a woman who's with WEAL, and WEAL is the Wellbeing Economy Alliance set up by Rockefeller and funded by Rockefeller. I'm like, how is regenerative farming in there around these impact markets and these social impact markets? Haven't sort of gone down enough to understand it, but it's like every, bell in my, warning bells around what's going on here. And then I'm seeing all these people that I really like and I've connected to, thinking that conference is fantastic. And I'm like, he's obviously in there in some way and he's got a massive following. So what are they doing? Because they've got all this new economy, the new economy alliances and the wellbeing alliances and, this, partly the permaculture and the regenerative farming. And I know really good people involved in all of those as well who really care about the earth. And I'm like, what is this? What are they creating here? I haven't got my head around it yet. Like, what are they doing here?
Yeah, this is it, Kate. I'm wrestling with this as well because, obviously, like every single person that's aware or has been aware for decades that there's loads of stuff that we don't know. Let's put it like that. Aware that there's loads of stuff we don't know because there's always something going on behind the scenes to dictate and bring in the structures in which the human being has to live. This stuff, exactly the same as you, because I'd done a permaculture course in, I think, 2018, because I could smell something's really going to happen soon. And what the fuck is it? And, I've been trying to grow food in my own garden, blah, 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 while the skies are being poisoned and then the food is black. And I don't know. I just feel like, if I'm to hazard a guess, I don't know if it is, like you said, co-opted or infiltrated, or whether these people have always been ready in the sort of stage right to be wheeled out in front of humanity when there was a shock and awe of a fake killer plague story. Let's wheel them out. Here comes Zach Bush. Here comes this one. Here comes that one. Because they are going to be, the Ubermensch above the nobody humans, you, me, and everyone below. And, so it's, I don't know how to put it. It's like, who doesn't want regenerative farming? Who doesn't want organic food? Who doesn't want clean water and clean skies? I don't know anyone that doesn't want that. But is it that these, like you said, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all these families that are connected with it all relying on money, and so they decide what structures go in? This is where I feel like we need our hypervigilance, actually.
Hugely,
But,
hugely.
but whether we can turn it around, I really don't know. I really don't know, Kate.
I don't know either. So I sort of had the thought of, create a community like this. I know that people don't like the word community, but I mean it in a literal sense of the people that you live around in the towns. And I thought we have to fight this locally. We have to fight this when it's in our towns, and we have to recognize that we have to know what it is in the government documents, and then we have to look at who the big players are, etc. So I've been quite busy doing that, because it's like, they're doing so much in my area. We're becoming a mega city region, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. We're going to be an ag tech region. We're going to be known for our ag tech. There's going to be a huge amount more people coming in with the affordable housing, thing. They're partnering with the local Aboriginal Land Council, who they've got the most land in the Central Coast where I live, and then they have another 1,000 land claims in. And because it's under an Aboriginal Land Council, they can be given land and build on it where you can't normally. So you can be given environmentally protected land, and it can get built on through the Aboriginal land. So I'm just talking about all the things that I'm seeing around, and how you actually get any eyes on all of these different things that are coming in. And it's very intense. It's very intense. And then I'm watching the children. They've been given, the government's giving them well-being surveys every single week in schools. So the kids are being surveyed off the Richter scale. And I'm wondering, how many parents are parents writing in and saying, what's this survey? How's it going to be used? Who's actually going to see that that's related to my child? Because I think this is about making impact markets off them, because the Treasurer of Australia has said in February this year, social impact bonds are the way we're going. So then suddenly there is wellbeing surveys. So they're assessing the children weekly to see, what are they going to do with that information? Are parents aware of how much their children are they aware? And I keep putting stuff out and going, how do I make more parents aware of all of this? Then you've got all the mental health stuff. You've got the ADHD, which is exploding because the government paid for a report that was done. I can't remember the body that did it, but the body that did it is actually funded, has yearly conferences that are funded by the pharmaceutical companies that sell ADHD drugs, and they made it much easier to be diagnosed with ADHD. And as soon as a child gets diagnosed with ADHD, you should actually look through all the family. Even though there's nothing to say, it runs in families. So you've got all this stuff, and I'm just like watching all these things, and I'm going, parents really need to know this. They need to be completely alert to that there's huge amounts of markets being created on their children. Their children have no privacy. They're actually asking questions about, how happy are the children with their income that the family's got. I mean, they're asking Year 7 children, which is 12 or 13, how happy are you with the things that you have? I mean, that's your family's stuff. You don't have your own independent income at 13. So they're assessing families in that way, and more prodding questions around families. There's one survey that's being rolled out, and you can't actually, even as a parent, see the questions.
Oh my God.
You have to, you can, I think, if you go and sit with the principal, but you can't see it because it's a private body that supplies the questions, and they've got the intellectual property over it. So
that is ridiculous.
I really want parents. That's the thing that I feel is like, at the bare minimum, know what's happening to your children. Know that, it's actually going to be very hard for children not to be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. Parents have to really get in there and try and understand the forces that are here. Otherwise, their children are going to be, diagnosed. And once you're diagnosed, then that can lead to a lot of other things. So there's just there's traps. I just see all these traps, and they're all coming together under the One Health model. Like there's this whole model where they're bringing your physical health, your mental health, everything together, in one way, where I guess it will be on a digital ledger, and all of that piece of information is who you are. And then the other troubling aspect that I really want parents to be aware of is that they are talking. So what's it called? Questacon in Canberra in Australia. They are like a taxpayer-funded science thing that you can take your children to. They've got something in there that they're talking to children and asking them questions like, do you feel that that people should be genetically altered to stop them getting diseases? Do you think it should be mandatory for genetic altering to occur? Should genetic altering of criminals be allowed? You know, they're asking these children these questions.
Oh my God.
But they're actually coming out in the open now because they've got huge plans for CRISPRing, cutting the genetic structure of everything, and changing it and implanting things into people. They've got huge plans for it, but now they're normalizing it through the children.
My God, Kate, that was harrowing to hear, even though I know it. It's harrowing to hear it out of another human being's mouth, isn't it? That's why I really sort of believe in the power of the human voice, of us, like you said, being local and speaking. I mean, even on the bare basics of all the things you've said, I haven't been able to get my children out of school. I mean, people say, oh, everyone needs to be home ed, and it's like, it's a much bigger problem than that, guys. It's a much bigger problem than people being home ed. But the basics are, I can't even get to a parents' evening now, person with person, because it's online.
Yeah.
I, try to get to my school. And I mean, I spoke out in 2020 to my child's secondary school. And at the time, it was my daughter's primary school that she was just about to leave. I went in person and just said my piece, like, this is all bullshit. I think it's a potential liberation era, an awakening, a shift, or whatever you want to call it. But this and this is going on. Of course, I was tolerated in the room, but 3 years on, they must think, well, so-and-so's mother's a bit. So there was no listening to that. It got really heated when I went in to say, you cannot do genetic experimentation on your school property to these children.
Yeah.
I went into schools. At first, I thought I was going in alone. And when we talk about infiltration, people came with me. I think they were infiltrators. It just got worse and worse. It got absolutely dreadful. Police called. In one instance, police already there. In another, it was mayhem, insane. Like nobody knew what was going on, and how dare someone come into school speaking about this and wanting to speak. My approach had been, I want to speak human with human. The head teacher, you can take your label off as head teacher, and I'll take my label off as of classical violinist, and we'll sit human with human and speak and say, do we actually know what's going on here? Can we wrestle through this together? That just backfired hideously, and that example of, like, you can't see a teacher anymore, it's all online. So a parent going to parent evening in our local community, it's all online. And I was told it's because they did a survey and the parents wanted it. So the parents wanted it. The parents wanted it. When I said, I'm not going to do a parents' evening online, I insist on coming down to see a person, I was told, well, that is impossible. So then what I was offered was that my 17-year-old son should be in place of me doing the parents' evening so that he could hear the feedback from the teacher. And it was like, no, wait a minute, this is called parents' evening. You don't take a child as a representative. I mean, what's really angering me about it is we do have a planet full of awake human beings, you, me, and loads of us, probably millions. And our children are being mind controlled by asleep human beings called teachers, politicians, experts, whatever. That's just unacceptable to me. And I don't even have a solution.
No, and it's also, people, so in the welfare industry, I can just speak for that, people who stood up and questioned it or didn't go along with it were all fired. So you actually, it's still mandated now. So you've only got people in the industry pretty much, not 100%, because some people would have gone along with it, but so if you've got somebody that comes in and says, I've had the worst few years, I'm so distressed and so disturbed, are they going to say, well, of course you are, because the whole world's gone insane and, really bad, difficult stuff has happened to you? They're not going to say that.
No.
So they're not going to get any verification or any, I don't know, what do you call it? Just sanity. Just a sane person to talk to who acknowledges that's what's been done is wrong. So that so you've got this whole system, and that's what people need to also, parents need to, I guess we're in, you know, if people are listening now, it's only people who probably think similarly, but you know, they do need to realize that that's the people left standing now, are people who will go along to allow.
This is key, Kate, and thanks for highlighting that. This is key, that those bastions of the establishment or society who are delivering beautiful things for humanity or not beautiful things in a care industry, in a education industry, whatever, the only people left are the ones that complied, bar maybe a few exceptions. It was the same for me. I'm not welcome in my industry. I'm not welcome in the music profession. That's neither here nor there, we could say, because we could say those are the cherries on the top, being able to enjoy music, but it shouldn't be. It fucking well shouldn't be. And in our local areas, my partner and I, we tried to set up, you know, when you say about local, again, we tried to work with people, speaking the truth and saying in a sane way. Again, I don't know if it was infiltrated or whether people are too frightened to try to go to form something without a job, because even though these people were quote unquote awake to what was happening, the excuse that was given, or maybe that sounds too cruel, the reason given for not being able to work together, like growing food, speaking to other people, was I have a job and I need to support my family. So this is unworkable, isn't it? As long as this continues, I have a job, I must earn money to support my family. How are we even going to do our local communities? Because as you said, it's only those that unwittingly have gone along with it. I mean, I don't feel quite as angry. I don't know. I think we've had to go through so many emotions, have we, where we're feeling like, wake up, you're ruining it for everyone. But at the same time, I understand how deep the mind control has gone on all of us, you know, from childhood. So my fantasy was a little bit like what you're saying, Kate, which was we're going to be in local, we're going to speak to same people, we're going to grow our own food, we're going to help each other without monopoly tokens. We're going to actually live the sacred no, which is you're not going to be funded by us, thanks. You're not getting a penny out of us to bring in this cyborgia. I mean, I want to go back to what you said, because I haven't really listened to it properly, even though I hear what you're saying. The asking children about, do you think it would be a good idea to change people's DNA structure because they might be a criminal, they might have an illness? This is terrifying. Let's do that before anything else. Let me hear more, Kate.
So I just was listening to somebody talking about it, and they put up the slides of the questions. Hold on, I'll bring it up because I took a few screenshots of the questions.
Thank you.
But I've known this has come, you know, this is what they talk about in their documents. They talk about CRISPRing humans, and they talk about definitely CRISPRing animals, and they already are CRISPRing animals. But, you know, to hear that this is sort of, I guess they're just normalizing it now. So these are the questions. Curing disease with medicine they're asking yes or no. Curing disease with medicine is the same as curing disease through gene editing. That's one of them. I would edit my genes to make myself smarter or stronger. People should be free to edit their own genes without limits. Gene therapies that reduce the risk of certain diseases should be mandatory to help limit public health costs. And this is the way they're going to do it. As part of their rehabilitation, we should genetically modify convicted criminals to make them better citizens. People whose genes show that they are high risk for some diseases should pay more for health insurance. The government should keep a register of genetically modified humans. Genetically modified people will be superior to unmodified people. So they're normalizing all of this in just a normal thing that parents take their children to in school holidays.
Can you read that last one out again? That was terrifying.
Genetically modified people will be superior to unmodified people. So they will bring this in under this one. People whose genes, oh no, not that one. Where is it? Gene therapies that reduce the risk of certain diseases should be mandatory to help limit public health costs. So when we were talking before about the messaging for COVID, the messaging of for, you know, how they've gone about killing the bees in New South Wales, that's the same messaging. That messaging works. If we don't do this, it's going to cause this much more. It's all about risk assessment. So if we don't, you know, do this measure, it's going to be so much worse. And if you don't agree to this measure, that's just barbaric and awful, then you're responsible for, you know, you're a terrible, terrible human being. And it just seems to work. They can just do that with any topic. And go, oh, okay, I better do it. And that's what people have to wake up to, that they just, it's always about this risk, your risk assess. So in Queensland and Australia, now they do more and more genetic, and they probably do it in New South Wales as well, but more and more genetic screening of babies when they're first born. So they're keeping, you know, complete genetic, they want everyone's genetic structure, their genome. The Premier's father of Queensland works for a genetic organisation. I mean, it's just rampant. They want everyone's genetic structure, then they want to modify it dependent on their risk. And, you know, and then they want to implant, you know, the Internet of Bio-Nano things. They want to implant tech in your body that can pick up on viruses and whatever else, and it'll send an alert out. And it'll administer medicine, you know, externally, can be administered into your body. And and then you can be quarantined. They talk about this. It's over and over again in their documents. This is what this risk assessment, you know, everything's risk. The net zero stuff is all about risks, etc. And that's why we have to continuously modify ourselves in the environment and, you know, spray what that stuff is up in the sky now they're talking about to reflect the sunshine back, even though it's going to be horrendous for the actual, and, you know, the environment. And I can't stand the way everyone talks about climate change. Because in one way, it's like, why are we no longer talking about the natural environment? You know, this arbitrary climate change means they can do all these hideous things under the guise of climate change. So, yeah, and if you just scare people enough, it seems to just work every time.
It definitely does. You're right. I mean, this is the bit where I've been trying to wrestle with as well. It's like, that's all amazingly clear, the way you said it all, Kate. And it just goes from, like you said, there's a messaging system, which is, if you don't do that, this will happen. If you don't do that, this will happen. And I was looking at the sort of programmed fears within myself from my own childhood or birth or incarnation, whatever you want to call it. So it's like, I wanted to identify them all so that I could override them, actually, quite frankly. So this is the stuff of horror movies, except it's real because it's happening. If you don't do this, then this will happen to you. So I looked at the ones within me. It was like, if I don't do X, Y, Z, I might be imprisoned, quite frankly, incarcerated. That is the big fear. People say it's a fear of death. Oh, no, I don't mind not being here ever again. This is not a great place to be in the galaxy, is it? I don't know how else to put it, but I don't really fear that bit. But being incarcerated, leaving my children to being abused by a system of abusers, that's the actual fear. And when you said all that, that is terrifying, because again, there's the bypass of the mother there, because the expert or the system is coming in to give you the messaging system. This needs to happen. And I wanted to feel like, you know, I have spoken to my children since 2020 about how I am interpreting and translating life on planet Earth. You know, I'm owning it. I'm not imposing it on them. I'm not trying to frighten them, but I will own it. And I really wonder how many mums and dads are really speaking to young children about this stuff, because of course there's a very strange psychological thing where you say, which comes in within and says, you shouldn't be saying these things to children because it's too frightening. You shouldn't terrify them. And we are literally in a rock and a hard place, because on one level, I made the sovereign mother decision that my children will hear from their mother what is going on without, of course, I don't want to frighten them, but if it came to pass, that's way more frightening. But they will hear from it, so that the worse that it gets on this planet, which I think it's going to continue over the next decade or so, the more they will understand that their mother was the one that they could trust. That to me is absolutely crucial in this era, is for mothers to speak to their children. Because I do not go with this. I'm really upset about these diagnoses as well, Kate, because having not worked in any welfare systems, but having also taught young children violin as well as being a mother, I do not want to use their labels. I refuse to use these labels because they are sinister. And as far as I'm concerned, it's to cover up vaccine damage. For how many centuries they've been vaccinating human beings on this planet, I don't know. I am a vaccinated child. You know, I was vaccinated. My parents believed in it. But they are trying to cover up the damage they've done to our sacred vessels. And I just, you know, until we can speak about this in an everyday language, even with our children, you know, and I will say to my children, you know, these labels, autistic, Asperger's, and what was that other crushing one? Oppositional, defiance.
Disorder. There's so many with mental health, within the mental health realm. There's a huge
Yeah.
amount of disorders.
It's like, it's just all a cover up because they're trying to give labels and reasons and justifications why every human being on this planet is unhappy, because our environment is wrong. The planetary environment is wrong in so many ways, and so we can't flourish. We can't.
No. And they say, you know, the World Economic Forum says, I can't remember the exact amounts, but by 2030, it's going to be so many trillions of dollars for mental health, necessary for mental health. So that will be that will be brought into that. This is going to cost much money. We need to have other sorts of interventions, I'm sure, you know, the way they're speaking about it. And when children went back to school in America just recently from school holidays for ADHD, they couldn't get enough ADHD drugs. ADHD drugs ran high because the amount that they needed to put the children on when they went back to school, because a lot of parents obviously let their kids go through the school holidays without them. And where is anyone saying something is obviously going terribly wrong if our children need to be drugged to sit at school and to make them to be handleable, you know, like so everyone can handle them, you know, and there's just no sane conversations. There's very few sane conversations out there. Anyone questioning anything, it's actually like a runaway train now, you know. It's just moving so quickly, gaining momentum, that they're crafting the narrative and the solution now, and it's really, really, really terrifying. But I agree with you that it is scary, and I've been you know, really frightened by lots of things I've seen over the last few years and distressed. But I still think if we don't know what it is, we're going to walk into it.
Exactly.
And your children are going to walk into it. And even if, you know, push comes to shove and they really force a lot of stuff, you'll know what you're going into, you know, like if there's no way around it, you know, at some point. I mean, if they turned around and said, if you don't vaccinate your children, you're going to lose them to foster care. I mean,
oh my God.
You know, I mean, I think that's coming. So because, you know, everything's seen as health, and if any parent's getting in the way of their child's health, you know, they're framing those narratives, and they're getting tighter and tighter with it all. So, you know, then there's going to be potentially things that parents have to do that they don't want to do. But at least just, you know, they have to know what's happening. They do have to know what's happening. That's my message. And I know it's really hard to see it, but what other choice do we have?
Yeah, we don't have another choice.
Yeah.
Just like even on a psychological level, taking it back to what we said at the beginning, Kate, because I couldn't agree more with you. It's like we have to be able to speak in an everyday language about what is happening on planet Earth, whether we're right about it or wrong, whether it's obvious or not. We have to be able to claim our voices in our communities and say, you know, something's smelling off. Can we look at this together? Something, because I don't know how many years it's going to take, but it would be human, in my opinion, human nature to be talking together. And even that is nearly impossible now. It's gotten so insane. And this this feeling of the expert knows best, like you said, it's been so carefully and strategically put in a drip effect. My message would want to be like, you are a human being on this planet. We are human beings on this planet. We are the human experts on this planet, taking off all these stupid labels. We are human beings. We can sense what's right for a human and a planet, and we can sense what's wrong. And if we can sense that this isn't the way that we want humanity to go, excuse me, then we have a chance, don't we? Because we can communicate amongst ourselves about we are going to say no to certain things. I mean, I don't know, obviously, I can't predict the future, but like you said, Kate, it's if we can talk about it in an everyday language, surely that's something.
Yeah, I think when you lose, I think I put that on one of your posts, because that was one of those things in
Yeah.
those, in that first year of just being, really like, how am I going to speak out? This is feeling really wrong. The vitriol that was around about anyone questioning anything around, COVID. And within my own family. And I was just like, once we lose, if I can't speak and ask questions, then I've pretty much lost it all. Like, what have I got if I can't? And I just kept running through. It was like a mantra. It was like, I thought that we lived in a world where we could talk and raise questions and ask questions. So I'm not going to stop now. Like, and what is that? So I think it's really important to keep talking. And I also think, a mother holds her baby, like for 9 months within her body, grows her baby. There is a very strong instinctual understanding of your child and your baby. And that's that primary feeling that's there. And if mothers can find that or not allow that to be eroded, keep that space. It's a sacred space. It's something where you can intuitively know when your child something's going wrong, even if you don't outwardly know. You can sometimes have a sense that something's not right with them, or that's not something that's really, really special. And and now it's like, even I mean, we haven't talked about it, but even now they're trying to frame us as people with uteruses. They're trying to take away any sense of that actual really primary bond. I'm not dismissing fathers. I think fathers are amazing, whatever, but the primary bond of a mother, having a baby inside her body and growing that baby, they're trying to dismantle that and confuse boys around it all as well. So I mean, that's just really, really disturbing that they're doing that. And that's actually one of the huge things that disturbs me that's happening in the schools now.
Yes, same, Kate, same. I mean, that is the key piece. If as humanity we're going to turn this around since 2020, and we've got to witness all this ridiculousness. And actually, it's not just ridiculous, it's terrifying, and it is malevolent, and it's sinister. It's like, it is keeping hold of that, which is, it's not about saying we're better than men, which is what some people are trying to say. It's not about that. That's the fake narrative they want you to think.
Yep.
It is the mother's body that grows the baby. It is the female mother's body that grows the baby, and the baby's coming, is born, and then this bond, that is what they're trying to destroy for good. And we must not allow that. We must not allow that. Even if some people have been genetically meddled with already, okay, but we must not allow that. I don't know what you call it. It's more than just a physical bond. It's an emotional bond. It's a psychic bond. It's an awareness of, this is a precious being living on this planet. Like I am a precious being. Like we are precious beings. Like everyone that is human is a precious being, no matter what's happened to them. We live on something called the Mother Earth. It's working in a particular way. There's beings of benevolence, trees, waters, soils, and we are beings of benevolence. We are not the way that people that are overlords are trying to portray everything, which is there's something wrong with the human. It needs evolving, improving, meddling with. That has got to be the sacred no. No, you don't do that. No, you're not going to do that. So like in the everyday level, I mean, I have to speak to my children not as children anymore. I mean, not that I ever knew there was never that sort of, do you know what I mean, Kate? That weird power hierarchy. But it's like, when they're telling me what they're pissed off about, that to me is honored and validated day in, day out. They're pissed off about you know, some teacher behaved like that towards them, or some child behaved like that, or that they're unsure about X, Y, Z. We have the normal, to me, what is normal conversation, which is validating what they are going through, validating the experience. They don't know all of it like I do, but they are, my God, they are clocking it in a different way. There's no way I'm going to say, I don't think you're right, you're not fitting in, you need to go to a therapist, you need to do this. It's like, no, as a mom, you're going to bring it all, and you are going to have that validated and honored, and your voice is really important. And that's how I feel about all of humanity, Kate.
Yeah, that's really come across with what you what you say online. I've really understood that about you, which is really wonderful. And I think, I mean, it is a really hard situation to be having to talk to children and to be looking at children going, oh, I know what's come, you know, this is really terrifying.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
children are being terrified anyway.
Exactly.
Being terrified about the, you know, climate change and the end of the world, and they're being terrified in a really awful, you know, really destructive way. And maybe there's a way of, I mean, of course, it's not like just go, oh, you know, they're going to try and genetically alter you, and, you know, like, you know, there's ways of talking, but
yeah,
sanity, reality, you know, like realness and saneness, and how we, you know, we're all going to have to find ways of navigating this. We are all going to have to find it. And, you know, like people say, well, what's the solution? I get less of that now. I used to get that quite a lot. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't even believe they're doing this. I can't even believe, you know, that this is in movement. So, but if we can, I guess, just hold on to the children and try and, yeah, just, I mean, there's a lot, because they're going to be completely, I mean, they already are now with their own instincts, you know, like whether or not even someone's a boy or a girl or what you call them. I mean, they're meddling around with any natural, spontaneous way of communicating. So even children would be completely pressured to have to check every single thing that comes out of their mouth now.
That's terrifying as well. That the way that they're trying to, there's a really strange energy on the planet for adults and children of like, you daren't speak because someone will immediately go, you're this, you're that. And the labels that the overlords brought onto this planet are being taken seriously. So, you know, when you're saying about like the way to speak to kids and everything, sorry, I'm getting really over passionate now, I'm getting really wound up. It's like, that's exactly it, Kate. It's like, as you were speaking, I was feeling like, actually, this is a key piece as well. For me, it's like, I feel like a death doula of their delusions and illusions. So my main message to my children every day is, you are incredible human being. You are a perfect human being. All the other stuff is false messaging. It's false messaging. You are so precious. You don't need to worry about X, Y, Z, because you are already all of it. You are it. You are it. But the perpetual messaging that even our generation received, Kate, is you need to improve, you need to change, you need to. So this is really long seeded long ago. That's also what I tell my children, you know, like, mum's been through this as well, being told, you need to be different, you need to be better, you need to adjust, but you already perfect. This is a false message. You don't need the labels. You don't need to do anything to alter your body. You can do whatever. You could dress up, you can play, da 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 da. You know, because like you, I mean, I have a good friend whose biological daughter now is something else. I mean, not done anything in surgery, but got all the new labels.
Yeah, and that's really, they're bringing it in here. I don't know if it's, where are you? You're in England.
Yeah,
So
North England.
They're trying to put the bill through now. So if you're over 16, you can get your birth, you can just change your sex on your birth certificate, and under 16, it's a very small amount. You can, the child itself, under 15, I think, and under, the child itself can choose the therapist. So the parents have no say over that, and they've got to go to a few sessions, and then they can change their sex on their birth certificate. And if whoever it is, I can't remember the advisory committee that sits over, if they think it's not right that the parents should know, the parents won't even know for a 15 and under child. So I think that's happening all around the world. in step with each other. I really hate, what I really hate is that everything is happening in lockstep around the world together, and people don't wake up and think it's somehow just organically happening, or that it's all just the government in Australia just doing this. And it's like, it's really, I've actually found that really hard to see. It's very hard to get people to move out of their narrative, the narrative they've constructed over the years around the government, and it's like, it doesn't matter what new information you give, it just does not go in. It's just bizarre. You can, because I pretty much always just show source documents. So I just show this is what they're saying here, this is what they're saying there. And it's like, does that change or alter? No, people still think it's just the Labor government or it's just the Liberal government. And I find that really perplexing, that there's not a greater sense of this is a worldwide march towards something.
Yeah, I found that really perplexing as well, Kate. And it's also why I really, really appreciate you and other women and men that I've seen that are very good with source documents by showing this, and this. Because I've been musing over this as well. Because I think it was when I was expecting my first child, so that was 18 years ago, when I was sitting in Abbey Road being a musician, and I thought, something's really wrong with this planet, even in the creativity of it all. And I thought, I'm going to start, excuse me, studying for my hobby about power structures, global power structures, and looking into social science and all the rest. That's how I did it. So there was, I don't know, that could be sort of called academic or intellectual, but I wanted to do it because I just thought this was such a conundrum. Like, what are the power structures on this planet globally? Like you said, rather than just, oh, it's a left-wing government or a right-wing. Who is doing the power structures on the planet? And I could only call it the overlords. And it's like, is it in the corporations? Is it in the banks? Is it all of it? And it's sort of like the whole cage, isn't it? But sorry, that was the preamble. I've got to admit as well, like the more information I receive, the worse I feel as well. I am in absolute information overload, and that's where I was feeling like, how do we do this through the felt sense? How do we do this through the felt sense? Because I was wondering, like, what does it feel like to be other people? Because if I was a child now hearing info all the time, or even an adult, I almost feel traumatized, like I'm back at school, like there's someone's educating me, like teaching me, like this is happening now. This is, it's like, is there another way that we do this rather than all the info? Is there another way?
Yeah.
And that's why I felt like I need to speak out from like an inner knowing, like a noticing, like the felt sense. I'm not saying that's the right way at all. But between us, we are a team human, aren't we? We are all bringing so many needed aspects of this.
Yeah. I think so. I definitely think so. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of really good stuff coming out, and people, I mean, I wasn't even aware. It's only been the last 2 years. I just was like, started to go, I need to work out what's happening on a bigger level than COVID. And and it's been complete information overload, and seeing, what people are talking about, not understanding, aspects of it at all. And I'm sure amounts I still don't understand. But yes, I do believe that everyone needs to come at it authentically. So it's how they work, and it's just an authentic, this is how I connect, or this is how I see something, this is my authentic voice. And that's, what you've been talking about, that we actually need to find our authentic voice. And my thing that's been running through I've had two things. One was, I'm allowed to speak and ask questions. That was really strong in me. The other one was, I don't know what the hell's going on. I just have to find the next constructive step, the next constructive step. Where do I put my energy? What am I going to do? I don't want to do something destructive. I want to, what's the most constructive thing I can do in this next? Because, at one point in there, it felt like, with the COVID stuff, I actually had the fantasy they were going to come and push me on the ground. Like I was like, they're going to have to push me on the ground and stick it in my arm, and they're now trying to pretend that it was never that bad, but they did that. They absolutely gave the message that they would become incredibly brutal, and they were very, very brutal. there were protests in Melbourne. I don't know if you saw it over there, but in Melbourne,
Yes.
Australia, they were firing on people with rubber bullets. I don't think the vast majority of people in Australia even know that.
Oh my God.
I don't even know if that was put in mainstream media. I was watching it live streamed, and that was the part where it just crossed the line for me. And I'm like, I'm not going along with any of this. That was it. And but it wasn't talked about, no one was talking about it. I mean,
I didn't know
you
about
get?
rubber bullets, Kate. I didn't know about rubber
No, they
bullets,
did
and
rubber
lots of
bullets on people, yeah. They were brutal. They were completely armed. They were in black, full on black masks. They were, just walking down the streets with guns, and people were running.
oh
And
my
that's,
God.
Melbourne and that they had the most horrific premier who's just resigned, but that doesn't mean anything. He'll be replaced
Yeah,
by,
it doesn't.
but it's the things that were happening were so brutal. And I just think if we can't not look at, we can't shy away from that. We can't just,
Yeah.
I think people, like, this is what I think now. It's almost like we're in two separate worlds within, Australia, or the people. It's like the people who said no saw what was underneath the mask. The people who were with it and just went, oh yeah, I'll go and do it and whatever else. They don't know. They don't know what we saw and we know is there. It's there. It's just waiting again, So they don't know that. So sometimes that's a hard thing as well, knowing what it is.
Yeah. I mean, that is so true. I mean, to round up for today, Kate, and I'm really grateful to meet you. And it's really beautiful to meet, even though we're having to do it on the machines, because as far as I'm concerned, we've only got each other. Humanity's only got humanity. I don't think any of the tools like the money system, people's jobs, careers, I feel like it's all leaving. So what we'll have is each other. And, like I'd love you to recap, like if you were the person that was bringing the vision to the world, what would you like to see as the reality on this planet for humanity? What would you like to see if it was as easy as just going bam, bam, bam? That's what it needs to look like.
Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? Because I'm sort of almost feeling like I need to go down a whole history of understanding, all these different systems that people have tried to set up, because how do you actually stop this small amount of people taking and getting more and more power hungry and taking more, like every system seems to go to that. And how do you stop that from happening where it's just that greedy, controlling aspect? So I haven't actually got a sense what system works, in maybe it's a political system, but I do not, and I guess maybe I'm still, I do believe people need genuine autonomy, and they do need to have a life that is theirs. And that doesn't mean you don't have responsibilities to others, and you don't have, in your relationships and to the earth and to the planet, that you don't have a genuine need to care for what sustains us. Of course you do. Of course we do have to have, but it's not top-down enforced bullshit narratives that are just about controlling and limiting every single person to this terrible, terrible force that's up there, taking control. I do believe we need to stay human. We need to stay. I think there's so much more power in humans and nature and everything that we haven't even gone anywhere near, like within in our sphere, in my lifetime, the mystery and, much more that we could actually become as actual real human beings on this earth. And it is all about relationships as well. We do have to stay connected to each other and not allow us to be connected just through technology, which, the metaverse and everything else. We have to stay genuine. We have to also find a way to stay intrinsically genuine to ourselves, even if that's hard, even if that means that people clash, even if it means we've got to work on conflict. We have to work on all of that. That's being human. It's not I think the freedom movement made a mistake thinking that everything was going to be pearly and, oh, we've found our new family and we're all going to, life isn't like that. Even your own family has to fight, and you have to work out how to get through things together. But we have to work this out together and stay connected and, I don't know, care for each other in a real way, not in a fake way, not in the fake equity way that they've manufactured.
I love that, Kate. That is exactly how I feel it too. I love that. That is really inspiring, and that's what I feel we're here to birth as well. You know, humanity is here to birth what you've just described. And like you said, we may say it in different ways, and we may have to address things where, like, we don't agree, because we're trying to birth our actual way forward on this planet and
Yeah.
begin. I'm really grateful for your time, Kate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. That was lovely. Thanks for talking to me.
Ditto. Thank you, Kate. So grateful.